Welcome to GydeBites. I'm your host Prasanna, and today we have Anirban with us to explore the secrets of measuring the success of content on the learners. Anirban is a Senior Vice President and Head of Training and Development at Spandana Sphoorty Financial Limited and brings over 18 years of experience in the L&D field. Welcome, Anirban.
Thank you so much, Prasanna. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Let's jump right in, Anirban, with our first question in a way. So, what types of training content you generally create as a part of your training programs and learning initiatives and so on?
So, Prasanna, there are different training content. So, first of all, before we jump into the training content, we need to understand the context first. So, the business objective, the mission and vision of the organization has to be first taken into account, and considering that the mission and vision of the organization and the business objective of the organization, we are preparing the content which caters to different population for different parameters. So when I say different parameters, mainly the training content are built and the training activities are revolving around the functional content, as because we are into lending space, we are into unsecured lending space and secured lending space both. So the functional content will talk about the product, the entire process, the policies, the credit and everything. Whole host of functional content are being created based on the functional requirement of each and every department which are related to the lending business. So that is one area where we are talking about content and the training activities which are in. Number two is there are some content which is dependent on the context of the training need that we have done, training need analysis that we have done. Number one is we have different population. We have a population, a majority of the population are the operation people, those who are sourcing the business and those who are responsible for collection are there in the field, right? And we have a host of support function, those who are there in the field in a decentralized offices. And we also have a good number of around 450 people in HO, those who are supporting the entire field. So the entire support function sits in HO. So for functional role, for the operation team, for the business team, we have different content. Like one is the functional content that I spoke about. There are other contents like people, those who are in the role of individual contributor, those who are in the role of first time manager, those who are in the role of managers of managers, and those we have identified as a high potential employees. So depending on the category, we have different content to cater and different program to cater to this particular population. And also for corporate training or the support function and the people, those who are in HO. So we have corporate training content which are majorly focused on their workplace skill, focused on their behavioral intervention, and focused on their functional skills. Say suppose our IT team, they want to learn a particular language, then we have to understand the particular context that why they want to learn a particular language. Then we have to rope in an external partner who is actually the subject matter expert in that particular area, and then do the training for them. So in that case, a content partnership has to happen, right? So specifically in-house content that we built are the functional content, some of the very basic workplace content, the behavioral content, basic content. And when it comes to training the high potential employees, managers training, and the hardcore functional training like a language like R, Python, these kind of functional training or any training related to risk. So on those areas, we are partnering with the content partner, those who are the subject matter expert available in the market. So that is how we are approaching as per the context of the organization, depending on the mission and vision of the organization, and also where we are in terms of business, where do we want to reach in terms of business objective.
Sounds
so that is how we are, the principle through which we are designing the content.
Sure. So the next question that comes to mind based on what you have answered is, I mean, there are various types of these training programs and contents being created. What, in your opinion, in your current organization or in your prior, what is the most effective way or effective content that you are seeing from the functional standpoint? I understand that the IT folks will have different training requirements, but from the functional standpoint, from the domain standpoint, what is the most effective training content that you have seen?
So from the functional or from the domain standpoint, Prasanna, in our case, if I have to talk about the NBFC, non-banking financial corporation, and specifically the microfinance institutes and the other NBFCs, the kind of people, the kind of target audience that we have, right? For them, their time is very important. So their engagement in a day in and day out field activities are so high, right? The time is very less, right?
Right.
So the best way to reach them is physical interaction. So there is no doubt. So we are in the era of blended learning. We are in the era of digital learning. But in our case, physical interaction will always take the first place. The reason behind people, those whom we are catering to, the target audience, they are also not from a very sophisticated educational background. They are not from any management colleges. They are either class 12 pass or graduate. At the max, they are graduate or diploma holders. And they are all coming from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities or even places, different remote locations. So for them, it is important for us to talk to them in person, because our business is a person which is very high on touch, right? It's a very people intensive business. So they are meeting the customer day in and day out in person. And for them, the entire business sourcing and the business collection activity is happening through the application. But application is something which are facilitating the process. You have to interact day in and day out with the customer for collecting the EMI back or to source the application for new loan customer.
Yeah.
Right. So in that case, their interaction level with our customer is very high. As because we are into unsecured lending space, the biggest portfolio that we have, and our delinquency is less than 99%. Right.
Wow.
Delinquency is less than delinquency is less than 1%.
1%.
So
Yeah.
less than 1%. So the entire unsecured lending space is the entire relationship is built on trust, right? And to have that high level of trust, you need to have a high level of discipline. Our people, they reaches the customer place right in the time that we have promised, and we make sure the customer comes to that particular place all in a group, right? Have that particular discipline, a high level of interaction is very much required. Repetition of the same thing, that you need to have this discipline in place. You need to ask the customer to come to the center in on time. A customer should take each other's responsibility, as because it is a joint liability group. So everything is happening on trust, and everything is happening through that particular conversation. So the more we, from the training point of view, the more we touch base with our target audience, that is our field team members, in a physical setup, the more it is better. So physical setup is the best in our scenario. Though post-COVID, the time has changed, and we have also adopted the blended learning approach, where we are doing a physical training. We are also interacting with them through a virtual ILT, instructor-led session, and we are also hosting certain courses through LMS, learning management system, so that we are, over a period of time, gradually we are building the self-paced learning habit. But if you ask me, the priority is physical learning, one-on-one interaction, mentoring, and physical training in a physical setup. So that takes the front seat in our case.
Yeah, I mean that's so good to hear that you still are preferring the physical setup, because everything is so virtual these days, right? I mean, it's like nice to hear that you still believe and it still works for you, the physical and training environment. So you briefly mentioned about before we started on the training content and what's important and all. You briefly mentioned about the goals. To make sure that you align, are you aligning your content to your goals? What exactly you are doing? How are you doing that basically?
So whether we are in alignment with the goal or not, so the first thing that we do with the content is we engage the stakeholder in developing the content while developing the content. So if I have to talk about the domain content, before we develop, the domain content has to come from our process excellence team and the product. So
Sure.
once the process excellence and product team shares the raw content, then we convert that particular content into a trainable format. That what should be the way to train them. Then we engage our operation team, those who are the business team, those who are in the field, those who will be using that particular content to actually talk to the customer, and they will also use that particular content to manage the entire process, right? So make it happen. So make it much more practical. After we develop the first cut of content, training content, we get back, we involve the stakeholder from field. I ask the stakeholder to review the content, change the content or suggest changes if there is anything else. And then we roll out. So while rolling out the content, first we do the pilot. We don't roll out pan India. First we do the pilot and we see the impact of the content in terms of people understanding and people. So there are two parts to the functional of the domain content. First, people have to understand. Second, they have to remember. Third, they have to apply. So understanding and remembering the content is easy to check through a system. But whether they are being able to apply that in workplace, that is something where the question lies, where the entire training fraternity is actually struggling. The elephant in the room is whether we are able to convert the knowledge into application or not. Right?
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of factors. It is not only us, we cannot claim that as because we train that is why they are getting success. No, there could be other factors like incentive. There could be other factors like the nudge or push by the line managers. So those are pretty important factors for a person to become successful or applying the knowledge that he has gathered into application. Right? So those are very important factors. So, but yes, training is one important contributory factor where because most of our feet on street people are fresh. So there our role becomes much more important in terms of the content preparation has to be in such a way, in such a language, by using lot of illustrations, a lot of pictures, and most importantly that for each and every process we first address why it is,
Yeah.
and then what, and then how. So the why part is very prominent in our content. So for our case, we give money or credit support only to female,
Okay.
right? So we also answer that question that why female, why not male? And we have a concept, the RBI concept of joint liability group. So we have to answer that why group, why not a single
Yeah.
loan we are giving, why we are giving in group. So in each and every step, we try and answer the question of why. So that is the framework, why, what, and then how. How is the process? What is all about the definition and why part is first we need to clarify. Because we are catering the target audience, our business people, they are basically class 12 pass, graduate and diplomas, and they are coming from all rural areas. So the why part has to be
That's right.
answered very clearly. So that is the philosophy of the framework. And the functional piece comes from the product team. We then convert that functional piece into trainable content, keeping in mind that why, what, and how framework. And then we involve the stakeholder, business team, that you tell us that whether it is right, wrong, will it go, will they understand, will they not understand. Then we do a pilot, then we scale it up. So that is
So,
the step by step process that we follow.
this why what and how. This is an excellent framework to look at anything in a way, right? I mean, why we are doing it, what is that it is involved, and how we are supposed to do it. It's amazing. Thanks for sharing this, Anirban. So you double clicked on the elephant in the room in a way. So that's my next question to you. How do you measure the effectiveness? So you rolled out, you did a pilot, then how do you measure it? Whether what you have rolled out to your fraternity is successful, effective or not?
So there are 2-3 ways that we do in our case. It's a very case specific, context specific scenario. So suppose any new release happen, any new process has been introduced, right? Then we do the training for the new process, and then we start tracking the rate of adoption, right? So for any new process which are being introduced in our system, like we are catering to 1600 odd branches pan India, across India. We are present in 20 different states and union territories. So it's a huge distribution, right? And around 15,000 employees, right? So it's a huge distribution. So once something gets launched, if I have to talk about a process, then after the training, we track the rate of adoption of that particular process. So once we track the adoption, we see it in a way that adoption from a bucket of say 0% to 10%, 10 to 20, 20 to up till 70% we track. So then after some time, because adoption is something which is after you have gathered the knowledge of the new process, now it is time to apply. So application is the proof of adoption. So whether you have applied or not, it is not only dependent on the training intervention, because after the process has been explained to them, we immediately do the knowledge check, and then we see that whether they are optimal, they have that optimal knowledge to apply or not. So if we see that optimal knowledge is there, right? If most of the employees are in the score bucket of more than 80%, so we bucket the score into different, like 10 to 60% like that. Employees more than 80% bucket and application is 0, then we give it to the line manager, saying that they have the optimal knowledge, but due to some reason, it could be something which is beyond their control, it could be something which is intention. So now you have to manage this population.
Yeah.
We take a bucket where the knowledge is less than 50% and application is less than 10%. So after we do the training for all, we take that bucket up. Then our training managers, those who are there in the field, they individually touch base on those branches. So a knowledge of less than 50% and adoption less than 10%. We handhold them for 3 months, we mentor them, and our target is to reach 70% of the adoption of new process and then hand it over to the line function.
Wow.
That is number one.
That's very objective way to look at it. I mean, the how good they are at a knowledge level and how good they are at an applying level. Wow. Yeah, you were saying something.
So that is number one in terms of for any new process. So in terms of performance management, what we do is that we as a training team, we measure the success in 2 different ways. One is we measure the success for 2 different categories. Number one is the people, those who are joining us. So 3 months we track their performance. So again, the approach is same. We track the knowledge. If the knowledge is optimal, the performance is less, right? We involve the business team, the line manager, come and do the intervention and see that how and why these people are not being able to perform. Is the environment for performance is right? Is there any support which is required? If any support which is required, we my team coordinate with other stakeholders and make sure that he or she gets that particular support to perform. On the other hand, where knowledge is less and also the performance is less, right? We take that, we adopt them again, and we will make sure that whatever may be the regional average. So performance has a parameter. Each and every region, each and every state has different regional average. So we say for a new person to succeed in first 90 days, that person has to achieve 80% of the regional average. Alright. So our team focuses on those person and try and elevate their performance to 80% of the regional average. That is our target. And then we hand it over to the line function after 90 days. So that is another area in terms of performance management. The other area of performance management, another bucket which comes to me is are the PIP. People, those who fall into PIP, they have 2 months to perform and come out of the PIP bucket. So that particular bucket comes to me. We do different intervention, majorly one-on-one interaction with them, and try and see how we can motivate them to improve, because they are all old people. They are somehow, for some or the other reason, unable to perform. So the reason could be something which is beyond control. The reason could be something which is their own capability issue. If there is a capability issue, we train them, we coach them, we nudge them. And we actually, what we do in the process in these 2 months is we actually keep on motivating them and keep the hope alive. You can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
In that
very
way, what we do is that we try and make sure that in our case, the pool, the PIP pool that we get, at least 70% of people should be coming out of the PIP.
sure.
But if you ask me, the success rate is hovering around 51%. So these are the two areas in terms of performance we measure like this. In terms of new process adoption, I say, or in terms of any process adoption, in terms of performance, we measure like this. And in terms of high potential, this particular journey I have already done in my last organization, but this organization we have just started. In my last organization, what we see in terms of high potential employees, after identifying the high potential employee, we measure our success by seeing that whether the high potential employee are in the same bucket for a period of 1 year or more than a year. So we map them in a 9-box matrix. And the inverted L are the high potential employees for us. So after 1 year, after I being identified as a high potential employee, am I still there? Is my performance high and potential high? Both are there. So intermittent assessment or development center will tell me that whether I'm still there as a high potential employee or not. So our performance are being gauged. Especially it was my KRA being gauged that how many people, those who have been identified as high potential, are still there, but they have slipped to some other bucket. So again, there are other areas, there are other stakeholders, those who are involved, right? But again, I said that you cannot clearly delineate this is only training's responsibility. That is why I took that metaphor, the elephant in the room.
Yes.
But these are the at least some measurable way we measure the training impact.
Sure. No, that was really helpful. I mean, objectively mentioned how different process adoption and then new joinees and then people who are on PIP, and you evaluate and you do certain activities. So my last question to you for today is, in all these, in developing the content, in measuring the performance and so on and so forth, where do you see the role of technology and what you are using for as a technology tools or AI these days and so on and so forth? So what role you see of all these things?
The role of technology is very important in terms of, as because we are managing a scale, right? It's a huge scale. And I have a team of around 70 odd training managers, those who are there in the field, right? So the first thing of the role of technology is to shift from Excel based data management to system based data management. So we have one learning experiential platform where we have actually developed this particular thing. We have started capturing all the training activities in that particular platform. So whether it is on the job training happening, any training attendance, training feedback, training assessment, whatever training related activity has to be captured through that, so that we can come out of that Excel thing. So that is very painful. Managing the data of 70 training managers and collating the dashboard and publishing it every month becomes very painful. So there comes the role of technology in our industry very much. Second point is, yes, as I have said, in our case, it is more of physical interaction is more important, but we have already started doing the blended learning approach. We have also assigned, at least in my last 7 years, at least I have assigned at least 37 to 40 e-learning courses. So if you ask me, the coverage of those e-learning courses which we have assigned to develop the self-paced learning habit is 97-98%. I will not judge that coverage as a success, because my 70 training managers, they will make sure once a course is launched, they will push the field team कि इसको complete करवाओ.
Right, right.
So my point is, we are pushing them. It's not a pull yet. It is not a pull yet.
Yeah.
Right. So I cannot proudly say that 97% is my average coverage. Doesn't matter. Right. The success lies, as per me, if you ask me, Prasanna, to be very honest, I'm yet to find that particular answer. The success lies if I can use technology to pull the audience into learning. Right. Yes, I feel that I need to learn something.
Yeah.
And I, on my own, I go to my device, this particular device, open the learning app and learn something. This is something which we have not yet achieved. I think I'm not only talking about myself. I think this is a phenomena across most of the organizations are struggling to create that pull factor. So I think technology can play a huge part in creating that pull factor. And third most important thing is that I have interacted with lot of technology partners, right? I know it is very difficult, but that is what the flavor of the ground is, that the technology has to be very supple and flexible in terms of to suit the individual industry need and the context, and
Makes
the
sense.
geographical need also in terms of language. So I am catering to 9 different languages. So anything that I do through technology has to be first translated into 9 different languages. I think we are still not there in terms of language capability, in terms of having a proper AI tool to, though we are using lot of AI tool to create the videos and all, but we are still not there. If you talk about the different tools which are available, like Articulate 360 and all, still they are kind of not yet there in terms of each and every aspect of bringing that flavor, bringing that geographical flavor. So suppose if I have to project a Gujarati Mahila, right, a Gujarati woman wearing a typical Gujarati dress and a Bengali woman wearing a typical Bengali style of sari, you'll not be able to get those kind of figures in Articulate 360, which is the best one of the tool available in the market to create e-learning content, not even the video learning content also. So those are the areas I think we have just started scratching the surface in terms of technology. Technology has a huge role to play. The people, those who are providing this technology, has to think a little bit more, think a little bit wide. Also, one technology partner cannot, this is my personal opinion, cannot cater to each and every industry. Like a Jio's requirement, Reliance Jio's requirement of a learning partner in terms of technology cannot be same as my requirement.
Sure. Yeah.
So microfinance is a very different ball game. So a technology partner who has actually catered to microfinance industry or understand that and develop themselves like that will be much better approach rather than. So I don't know, this will happen maybe in some time. It's a cost huge cost is involved in technology, I know. And catering to only one particular industry for one particular technology partner or few technology partner to one particular industry is a very difficult proposition in terms of business sustainability. So that is what my limited understanding about technology.
Sure. Sure. No, that was really insightful. I mean, it sort of triggers a lot of thoughts in my mind also, because I come from technology, and I can literally see you are talking about training needs being different, and not being not able to sort of easily deliver the training content in wide variety of languages, and I can feel that. So before we conclude today, Anirban, we would like you to share one tip to our new young learning and development professionals that are tuning in today.
If you want to be a successful learning and development professional, I think you should get into the process in whichever process you are. Act like the person, those who are actually dealing with the customer. Get an immersive experience. Get your hands dirty. Then only you'll be able to do justice as a learning and development professional, right? Because if you do not go and talk to a customer, if you do not spend at least 1 to 2 months in a branch where the business people are going and talking to the customer, they are knocking one door to the other door and they are getting rejection. If you also do not face the same amount of rejection, you as a learning and development professional will not be able to come up with lot of ideas. You'll be able to actually understand the context of the target audience to whom you are catering. So, in one line, you leave that role for at least 2 months, 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, wow,
To whom
that
you are
that
catering.
was really good one. I mean, to understand who you want to train, whom you want to train, you have to understand what they are going to do on a
To leave
day-to-day
that
basis.
role,
Wow.
plain and simple,
Yeah,
you leave
yeah.
that role.
Thank you so much, Anirban. This
Thank
was
you,
really
Prashant.
wonderful, and I hope you liked our conversation as well.
Absolutely, I enjoyed thoroughly.
Yeah, and thank you to our audience for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, which provides you big insights in small bites. Until next time, keep learning and growing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.